silence. The kind of silence that has weight and texture, broken only by the gentle, rhythmic pop and hiss of seasoned oak logs in the hearth, and the faint, nostalgic crackle of a needle finding its groove on a vintage record. The warm, dancing light from the fireplace licks at the spines of leather-bound books on a crowded shelf, casting long, trembling shadows across a worn Persian rug. Welcome to Bedtime Stories. Tonight we leave the comfort of this study and descend into a cold, metallic labyrinth of state secrets and scientific hubris. We're examining a legend that has fermented in the dark cellars of conspiracy for decades, the Philadelphia experiment. A story not just of a vanishing ship, but of men who stared into the abyss of physics and were unmade by what stared back. So, settle in. Let the fire ward off the chill we're about to invite in. Our stage is the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard on the evening of October 28, 1943. The air is thick, not just with the pervasive Atlantic damp and the tang of salt, but with the industrial smells of wet rust, hot grease, and diesel exhaust. Arc lamps cast pools of harsh white light on the oily, reflective water of the harbor, their glare etching the silhouettes of dormant cranes and warehouses in stark relief. Aboard the Liberty ship SS Andrew Furuseth, a workhorse vessel with scuffed decks and paint peeling in long curls from its railings, Seaman Carl Allen finds a moment of respite. He leans against a cold bulkhead near the stern, the rough wool of his pea coat scratching his neck. The bitter taste of a cheap cigarette is a small comfort. His eyes are fixed, not on the stars, but on the sleek new silhouette of the USS Eldridge, DE-173, a Cannon-class destroyer escort resting at anchor a precise 97 meters away. The Eldridge is a hive of unusual activity. Against the backdrop of a war-weary port, its deck is anomalously alive under the floodlights. Men in dungarees, their breaths forming small clouds in the chill, are wrestling with cabling as thick as a man's arm, snaking it across the non-skid deck, plating towards strange, drum-shaped generators that hum with a latent, worrying power. The normal sounds of a ship at rest, the clang of a hatch, the murmur of conversation, are absent, replaced by the tense, clipped jargon of technicians, and the occasional sharp order from an officer whose face looks pinched under his cap's brim. Then a whistle pierces the air. The crew on the Eldridge, as one, stops and files below deck with a disciplined, hurried silence. A heavy metal door clangs shut with a sound of terrible finality. The ship now sits, a painted model of gray and haze, but utterly, profoundly empty of visible life. The silence from the Eldridge becomes a presence. On the Andrew Furuseth, men pause their card games, their mugs of tepid coffee halfway to their lips. Then it begins. A low-frequency hum, felt in the teeth and the fillings more than heard by the ears, vibrates up through the soles of their boots. The steel deck of their own ship begins to thrum in sympathy. The very air around the Eldridge warps, shimmering like a heat haze over a desert road. But this is a cold Philadelphia night. And then comes the fog. It doesn't rise from the water or condense from the air. It generates. A luminescent greenish-blue mist, the color of absinthe and static, blooms from the very hull plates of the destroyer. It coils like a living thing, thickening, swallowing the railing, the gun mounts, the towering mast, until the entire ship is a blurred, glowing outline within a pulsating cocoon. The mist expands outward, reaching tendrils across the water's surface, until the glowing edge of it hangs, shimmering, just a foot from the riveted steel plates of the Andrew Furuseth. Driven by a mix of terror and awe, Carl Allen leans over the cold railing. Against the shouted warnings of his shipmates, he stretches his arm out, fingers splayed, towards the unnatural phenomenon. He expects to feel damp cold. Instead, his hand encounters a solid, buzzing barrier, a wall of repulsive force that feels like pushing against the sideways grain of reality itself. A jolt, sharp and nauseating, rockets up his arm, and he snatches it back, his fingers numb and tingling. And in that moment of personal violation, the universe blinks. A silent, actinic flash blue-white and painfully pure erupts from within the fog, bleaching the world into a negative image for a split second. When vision returns, the men are left gasping. The green fog persists, churning slowly. But at its center, where 1,700 tons of steel, weaponry, and humanity should be, there is now only a perfect, ship-shaped void. The water, undisturbed, reflects the empty sky. The USS Eldridge is gone. For 4 minutes they stare at the nothingness. Then another flash, this one accompanied by a thunderclap of displaced air that rattles every porthole for a quarter mile. And the ship is back. It slams into existence, settling into the water with a groaning shudder that sends a small wave lapping against the neighboring hulls. But it is silent, dark. No running lights pierce the gloom. Its once proud lines seem subtly wrong, as if viewed through a flawed lens. The boarding party that ascends the gangplank an hour later enters a tomb. Their heavy rubber boots echo in a new, hollow way. The interior of the Eldridge is a scene of frozen chaos, illuminated only by the bouncing beams of their powerful lanterns. The air is stale, metallic, and under it, a coppery, organic smell that makes the stomach clench. All power is dead. The dials on control panels are dark. The gentle background hum of a living ship utterly absent. They find the first sailors in the mess hall. Some are collapsed on the deck, unconscious. Others are standing upright, rigid. A young man is petrified mid-stride, one foot forever lifted, his face a mask of mundane concentration. Another is seated at a table, his hands frozen around an invisible cup, his eyes wide open, unseeing, reflecting the lantern light with a glassy, doll-like sheen. They are not sleeping. They are paused. Deeper in the ship, in the narrow, piping-clad passageways near the engine room, they find the horrors. A machinist's mate is found sitting on the deck, quietly sobbing. He holds his right arm out before him. The beam of a flashlight reveals not skin and fabric, but a seamless, impossible fusion. From his fingertips to his elbow, his flesh, muscle, and bone have become one with the steel bulkhead. The pattern of the welded seam is now a raised scar across his palm. His knuckles are smooth, metallic protrusions. He is not trapped. He is integrated. In the radio room, a scene of pure, surreal carnage. A sailor's body is partially sunk through the solid deck plating, as if the steel had turned to viscous liquid and then re-solidified around his waist. He is alive, moaning, his hands scrabbling uselessly at the smooth, unbroken metal that now encases his lower torso. And in the corner, a heap that defies immediate comprehension, a tangle of uniforms, glistening viscera, and splintered bone, as if a human body had been turned inside out with immense casual force. Amid the ruin, on a chain, gleams a single clean dog tag. The survivors who could be extracted were taken away, their stories classified, their fates obscured. But the aftermath was its own curse. Some developed violent, unpredictable psychoses, their minds seemingly unmoored from time, attacking invisible foes or speaking in backwards, garbled tongues. Others retreated inward, becoming catatonic statues, requiring feeding and cleaning for the rest of their lives. And some simply ceased to be consistent. There is a report buried in a psychiatric log of a convalescing sailor who, during a routine check, calmly stood up and walked through the solid brick wall of the naval hospital ward. He was never seen again. What was the aim? According to fragmented accounts in the later correspondence of Carl Allen, the experiment was a desperate wartime attempt to weaponize Einstein's unfinished unified field theory. The idea was to use gargantuan electromagnetic coils, the ones seen on deck, to create a field so powerful it would bend light and radar waves around the Eldridge, rendering it optically and electronically invisible. Not mere camouflage, but a localized folding of space-time. They succeeded momentarily in making the ship disappear from our dimensional reference point. But the field did not discriminate. It treated the molecular structure of the sailors' bodies with the same brutal physics as the ship's hull, with catastrophic results. The official record, of course, tells a drier, saner tale. The deck logs of the USS Eldridge show it was undergoing shakedown trials near Bermuda in October 1943, not in Philadelphia. The Navy acknowledges experiments in degaussing using electrical currents to neutralize a ship's magnetic signature and make it invisible to magnetic mines. Witnesses likely saw the eerie St. Elmo's fire-like glow of a powerful degaussing field. The tragic incidents of radiation sickness and mental trauma aboard ships like the USS Timmerman in the 1950s provide a grim, plausible basis for the tales of illness and madness. So, where does that leave us? With a haunting convergence of fact and fear. A real ship, real experiments in electromagnetic stealth, and very real documented human suffering from the invisible weapons of the atomic age. The legend is the dark, mythic fungus that grew on this rotten timber of truth. It is a warning, etched not in stone, but in the collective unconscious, a warning that some thresholds, once crossed, erase the line between scientist and sorcerer, between victory and sacrifice. That in the quest to become invisible to the enemy, we must be careful not to make ourselves invisible to reality itself. The fog has long since dissipated. The files are sealed or lost. The last witnesses are dust. But in the quiet of the night, if you listen past the crackle of your own fire, you might just hear the faint residual hum of a field that never quite switched off, and the echo of a scream fused forever with silent steel. Sleep well, and perhaps leave a light on, not just to see by, but to be sure you're still here.